In this video, I'm going to share how I prepared for my fully natural birth. Welcome to Try with Tui. I'm Tui. I'm a conscious mom and a wife and gym owner living in Bali, Indonesia. In this channel, I share tips on conscious living and parenting and how to optimize your well-being so that you can thrive and feel at your best. So I gave birth fully naturally 9 months ago to my beautiful, healthy baby boy. And by natural, I mean that I gave birth without any interventions, without an epidural, without basically any assistance. I chose to give birth in this beautiful birthing center here in Bali, in Ubud. That felt for me the right choice. Between the home birth and that. For me, the hospital birth did not resonate. That didn't feel like the right option for me. However, we did have, of course, a plan B, because no matter how much we plan our births and prepare, there's always an aspect that we can't know exactly what's going to happen. So we did have a plan B, of course, in place should we have needed it. But plan A was to give birth in this beautiful birthing center called Bumi Sehat. And luckily everything went very smooth and we didn't have any complications or problems, and we were able to follow the plan basically. So the first thing what I did to prepare for giving birth naturally was learning what happens during birth and all sorts of scenarios what might happen, both physically, mentally, spiritually, in all the aspects. I believe that knowledge is power, and not to go into like all the horror scenarios, but more like understanding the birthing process, what happens in our body, so that when you are in it, you already know like, okay, this is part of the process. I believe that a lot of women these days are very disconnected from the birthing process, because back in the day, we would have, by the time a woman gives birth, she would have already been part of many births. Like back in the village times, when home birth was common, you would be part of like seeing your mom give birth to your siblings or your sister, or like be assisting. So that would be more like a natural thing that happens. And nowadays it's almost this like taboo, and everyone just goes to the hospital and comes back with a baby. And there's like, I believe, a lot of disconnection that, and a lot of like fear and like horror stories that women don't even really know and don't want to know and don't really like talk about the birthing process. And then there is this whole disconnection with like taking an epidural and not even feeling what's happening, and kind of outsourcing part of the birthing process also to the doctors and just kind of like following what someone outside of you says. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with taking an epidural or working with doctors or giving birth in a hospital. Like, of course, everyone needs to do what feels safe for them, what feels best for them. But what I would wish we would have more is this like actual connection to the birth, and actual connection to our body, and empowering women, empowering mamas. Back to the remembering that our body is literally built to give birth, that we are powerful and we can do this. Of course, there can be help and assistance, and it's very good that the modern day allows us, like when there are complications or something doesn't go as planned, that we do have access to like emergency C-sections and all these things. That wouldn't go to like number one go to that. There would be that aspect to birth that it's the natural process, and we're literally designed to do that. So for me, it was really helpful to understand exactly what happens during birth. I was like visiting this topic a lot during my pregnancy. And one practical example was that when I was watching a lot of birth stories and learning about like what usually mamas go through, there's usually this point that you just think you can't do it, that you just feel like, okay, it's enough, like you're done. You can't like, just take me out of this, like I don't want to do this anymore, like give me an epidural or take me to the hospital, whatever it might be. And since I had seen it so many times, I knew this is a very natural part of the birthing process, and it usually means that you're actually pretty close of actually having the baby. So I was prepared that this probably will happen or might happen. And I also shared it with my husband that, you know, like if and when that point comes that I start begging for an epidural or like taking me to the hospital, or I'm like done, I don't want to do it, like please just like really be with me there and remind me of my why and just like stay with me in the moment and don't like let me give up in a way. And then finally, of course, it happened. So there was a point towards the end of the birth, like quite soon before the baby was born, that I was literally like, I can't anymore, like I'm done. I was begging for an epidural, I was begging them to take me to the hospital, and I was just like almost panicking. And my husband stayed with me and he was reminding me like, look, we talked about this, you told me this is how we're going to proceed. And then indeed, it wasn't long that the baby was in my arms. But if I wouldn't have known it, I probably would have like actually panicked and really thought that there's something wrong. But because I already was aware that this probably will happen, my husband was aware, and we were able to handle the situation much more peacefully. The second thing I did a lot throughout my pregnancy, which I actually enjoyed a lot as well, was watching positive birth stories. For me, this was also part of like the educating myself, like what birth is like, what it can be like, what mamas go through. So I was watching a lot of YouTube videos of different kinds of like positive births, and that is the key for me. Was like I only wanted to hear and see positive birth stories, whether that was at home, in a birthing center, or in the hospital. Mostly I was watching home births because there's a lot of like very beautiful vlogs about it. But I also was very conscious that I wanted to block out any horror stories, any negative stories. Also, there were a few people who like wanted to start telling their story to me, even some friends, and I just like very compassionately told them that I'm not in the place of wanting to hear it before I give birth, because I didn't want to instill any sort of like fear or anything like that. So for me, that was like very empowering and also very emotional. Every time when I saw the baby come, I was like in tears, and really like that helped me like also get so excited for my own birth, and just like looking forward to that moment, and like thinking like, how is that going to be when I experience it myself? Even that, of course, it's always there's an aspect of mystery, like we don't know. I could plan for this beautiful unassisted birth, and then maybe something would happen. I would need to have an emergency C-section, for example. So I was also like, of course, open to the aspect that we're not in control of everything, but just like watching those beautiful, positive, empowering stories and different kinds of journeys as well, just helped me a lot to educate and to connect to the upcoming big event. The third thing that I did, especially towards the end of my pregnancy in the third trimester, was I listened to this book called Hypnobirthing. I think it's Hypnobirthing by the Morgan method. And for me, it just also helped me to kind of really tap into the power of giving birth and the aspect how natural it is, and how the kind of history of birthing, and how we have come to the point that we have become so disconnected, and that like giving birth, especially in the West, has become such a big business and so clinicalized, and how it like affects the mom, and how it affects the birth as well, like in which kind of state we are, in which kind of environment we are. And that book just gave me like a good perspective and understanding, and then especially the practical implications and meditations really helped me to like relax and practice my breathing and connect to myself, and also envision and visualize my positive birth. And that is the fourth thing that I did a lot, envisioning, especially towards the end of my pregnancy, when the date of the birth was approaching, envisioning the positive birth. And I did different kind of visualizations, from like very detailed, like imagining me, because I had visited the birthing center several times and I knew what the room is like. So I was envisioning myself there, and like the decorations and the little details that I was like wanting to have there, and like especially envisioning how I wanted to feel and who was there, what was the atmosphere, how I was feeling in my body, and all these things. And then also envisioning just kind of the aspect of being able to surrender and trusting. So connecting with God, with source, whatever we want to call it, with that like something bigger that's outside of me, just like visualizing being taken care of, and visualizing feeling very safe, visualizing feeling very excited, and also visualizing that things would go smooth and fast and be pain-free. And just this kind of like closing my eyes, connecting within and visualizing. And the fifth thing that I did, also related to this, was I created these beautiful birth affirmation cards. I was trying to look for them so that I could show you what they look like. I couldn't find them. I know that I did store them somewhere. I didn't throw them away, but we just moved, so they're maybe somewhere like still packed. If I find a picture, or if I will find them, I will put it up on the screen somewhere so you can see. But basically, I think I had like 10 to 15 cards with like lots of colors and drawings, and just like making them very like, you know, positive, and with little sentences that resonated with me. Things like I inhale peace or softness, and I exhale tension, or I don't remember exactly what they said, but like movement brings improvement, and baby is almost here, and every surge brings me closer to baby, and these kind of like positive sentences. And we did have them there with me. I remember where they were in the room, but to be honest, I don't know if I actually looked at them like throughout the birth. At least like I just can't remember if I actually like watched them. Maybe I did, but like when I was giving birth, I was like a lot in another world as well, but with the hypnobirthing and just like being so present in the moment. So I can't remember a lot of the details, what happened throughout everything, but I did have them there, and it was also very fun to create them. And I think that was also part of like planning for the birth, and really like tuning into what I actually want, and what are the core beliefs that I want to hold, and also of course a very beautiful memory to have for after the birth. Once I find them one day, I can like kind of like connect back to that beautiful experience. And also one thing that I want to share that really helped me, as you probably heard, I was talking about surges instead of contractions. And this was one thing I think I learned from the Hypnobirthing book or somewhere else in a YouTube video. Someone mentioned it at some point, and it really like it really like catch me, like, yeah, true. Like I do believe very strongly that our words create our reality, like how we think, what we speak, and words are spells. And it really does affect our expectations and our beliefs and our experience. So I consciously chose, instead of, for example, using the word like contractions, which can feel like, I don't know, for me the association with contraction is like, oh, it's contraction, it's tension, it's painful. So I chose to use the word surges. And some other things as well, like I chose not to talk about like a painful birth, but more like intense sensations and these kind of things. I'm pretty sure they were talking about it in the book. So then afterwards, like it was okay for me, but like especially the weeks and the days like right before the birth, it really helped me to, instead of like talk about those kind of intense words that might have a negative association, I chose, and I also told my husband and my best friend who was here for the birth and like the birthing team, that I wanted to use these words to have like a more gentle, soft, and positive association. And the sixth thing that I did to prepare for the natural birth was connecting with my baby a lot. This was like such a beautiful practice that I just loved to do intuitively, especially when my belly started to grow and the bump started to be there. I was like cuddling him a lot throughout the day and talking to him, and like, you know, just like so looking forward to meeting him. And oftentimes, you know, especially when the baby started to move, we felt like really communicating, and things that I was communicating to him, especially the last weeks a lot, was like, you know, I'm ready when you're ready, and you come when it's the right time, and I trust you, and we're gonna do this together. And it's, you know, like just those kind of things that really made me connect with him, and made me also reminded me that it's me giving birth, but it's our birth. It's also, you know, it's my experience, but also his experience. And that was, for example, one very strong thing that helped me to stay strong with my why. I was gonna talk about a little bit later, like my why of choosing to give birth naturally and like not wanting to, for example, use an epidural. So that connection and that that doing it together aspect, and that also made me really excited and look forward to the birth. And that was also what I shared about the language. Like, of course, there was like certain, like, not like fears, but like first time giving birth, you don't really know what to expect before you experience it. But I consciously chose to like talk about it like I'm so excited and looking forward to it, and I'm so ready, and those kind of things, instead of like kind of like going into any negative or anything fear or anything like that. The seventh thing that I did to prepare for natural birth was taking it easy and listening to my body, especially towards the end of my pregnancy. And my pregnancy itself was very beautiful. I'm going to make another video about it, sharing my experience and some tips. But I was able to move throughout the pregnancy. The first trimester was a little bit more like I was much more tired, so I didn't exercise that much. But I was naturally really drawn to like healthy foods and nourishing my body. And I was like doing my last workout, like a very easy pace bike the day before I gave birth. So I was able to still like move and stay active and everything, but I was also like really just listening to my body. I was taking a lot of naps. I was reminding myself constantly like how hard my body is working, and also the aspect that birth is also physically really demanding, and it's good to prepare for it and rest for it and actually have energy once it's go time. So yeah, I was just really honoring my body, and also what I shared about how I was communicating to my baby was also like communicating to my body like how much I appreciate her and how proud I am of her, and just really in awe really of the female body, like how it's just all happening without us having to like give any orders. It just like happens. So what my role was in that, it was just like providing her with all the nourishment, like hydration, good quality nutrition, resting enough, and just listening to her needs. So that was also very beautiful and very important, especially those last days. When I felt the birth come closer, I was really like honoring that and just being a lot in the bed and allowing myself to just be in the space and feel the emotions. Also there was some very strong emotions and shifts happening, so just also giving space for all that processing. And the eighth thing that I did for the practicals, I did write a birth plan, and I highly recommend that you do this no matter in what kind of setting you choose or plan to give birth, because this really helped me get clear on all the details. Where do I want to give birth? Who do I want to be there? What is the birthing team? What kind of procedures and interventions I give my consent to, which ones not, in what kind of case maybe yes, what if plan B, what if we have to come to the hospital, what's like going to happen there if they would have to do this or this. They need to first get my consent and my husband's consent and all these kind of things, especially here in Indonesia, for example, in the hospitals, especially some hospitals, the C-section rate is extremely high, even over 90%, and it's a very common practice to kind of push or trick mothers also to do it, because it's a big business and it's money for the hospital. All these things, we can talk about it in another video, but I did want to make it very clear what I do allow, what I don't allow, if the case would be that we have to be transferred to the hospital. So the birthing plan was really kind of bringing everything together and getting very clear on what do I want to happen in the kind of planned scenario, and then if things go another road, how we're going to proceed with that. So that was very, very helpful. And then I downloaded this contractions app, or I don't know exactly what the name was. I'm going to check it and pop it here somewhere. But just to be ready when the searches start, just for the timing, so then you don't have to start like going to the app stores and like looking for it. This was ready there, and it was actually very helpful when the searches started to start timing, and then knowing when was the time to start heading to the birthing center. One important practical as well was packing our birthing bag, or more commonly known the hospital bag. Obviously we were not planning to go to the hospital. Also wherever, like if you birth at home is different, but if you go to if you need to leave your home, basically, it's good to have it prepared so you don't have to start packing in the midst of your surges or whatever might be happening. So this also for me was a very exciting thing. I started packing this birth bag already like weeks before the due date, because I'm like this anyway. If I go for a trip, I love to give myself enough time, and it kind of helps me to get into the mood instead of like this chaotic rush and not like, forgetting half the things. So for me, it was like, I would go back to that bag many times and check like, oh, what was the outfit again for the baby, and like all these things. And it was also like very nice. I had a list of things that needed to be there. I'm gonna make another video of the specifics, what to pack and what kind of tips I would give for that. But and then there was also a list of things that needed to happen that morning, certain kind of things that needed to be in the fridge, for example, or like phone chargers and things like that we would need to use up until we would go, so that it would also be very clear like what to kind of throw in the bag right before we go. And the fourth and last practical that I'm going to share at this point is a very important one and a very precious advice that I got from a doula, which we interviewed to possibly have at the birth, but then my best friend ended up coming and being our doula, so we didn't end up actually needing like an outside doula. But she said something that really stuck with me. I'm so grateful she said it. She said something in the lines of like, great, prepare for your birth, but prepare for what happens after. Prepare for postpartum. And this is a very precious advice, because especially if you give birth the first time, I believe like the second time, the third time, you already kind of know what's going to happen, and it's going to be probably like easier kind of the preparation side of things. But for the first time, it's this like mysterious big thing. At least for me, it was like it felt like this massive big event is going to change our life in the most big and beautiful way possible. So there was like, of course, a lot of focus around the pregnancy going to that very event. But then with that advice, it really helped me to also tune in like, okay, what happens after? Like what, even just the practical things, like what do I need after the birth? Like when the baby is there, like what do I need? What does the baby need? What does need to be in the house? Like all the things that was so helpful to also for that to have like several weeks or months of time to prepare everything. Because I can tell you when the baby arrives, like you just really want to be able to be present and to enjoy and not having to stress about like, shit, I don't have anything, you know, like, I mean, you don't need that much, but you do need some stuff. So yeah, definitely like prepare for the days and the weeks after, like even just simple things like food and clothes, like, you know, having comfortable clothes that you can be in your postpartum body and friendly for nursing, all these kind of things. So we had, for example, the baby room ready, all the things possible that we would need for a newborn. For me, I had the peri bottles, I had the like aftercare natural products to help me recover from birth and assist me in the whole recovering process. And that was so very helpful to have all of that. So there was like zero energy or time going into like trying to figure that stuff out when baby was born. So number 9, what I did to prepare for my natural positive birth was little things like eating lots of dates. I think I was eating like 6 to 8 dates. I don't remember how early I started. I started like maybe halfway through my pregnancy. I figured like it cannot harm you anyway, so why not? There's like, it's said that dates can help ripen your cervix, I think. And they're like really recommended for like a natural way to prepare you for birth. So I was eating a lot of dates. I was drinking lots of raspberry leaf tea. And I think like around 3 weeks before my due date, I started to lubricate my vagina with olive oil every night. This can also help with preventing tearing. I'm going to make another video specifically for all the things that I did to avoid tearing. And I did not tear. I don't know, of course, like which things that I did affected it and which ones perhaps didn't, but at least I'm really grateful that I did all the things, because I had a very beautiful birth with no tears and I recovered very, very fast as well. And the last thing for those things, I said I'm gonna make another video, but I use this device called the Epino. So this is basically like, we call it with my husband joking like a vagina balloon. So this is like a device that you insert in your vagina, and then you gradually stretch the diameter so that you get used to the sensation of like birthing, and also like the pelvic floor muscles get used to stretching gradually. And the last thing, the 10th thing that I did to prepare for a natural birth, and this is perhaps the most important one in a way, was getting very clear on the why. Why do I want to give birth in this way? Why do I want to not use an epidural? Why do I want to not have any interventions? Why do I want to be in the room without any additional people? All these kind of things, because that really helps when things get tough or when you're having a difficult moment, is to connect to that why. So for example, for me, the reason why I didn't want to birth in a hospital or use an epidural was because I really envisioned and wanted to have a positive birth both for me and my baby, and I wanted to be in a place where I feel safe and where there is as little as possible room for any unnecessary interventions or for any fear to kick in, for any like stress or someone telling me things that I maybe wouldn't want to hear, or any kind of things that just didn't align with me. And also with the epidural, when I looked into it quite a lot, like throughout my pregnancy, I also learned that it does affect the baby. So I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense, because your baby gets everything through your placenta, even if what you eat, what you drink, if you drink alcohol, if you smoke. Like, why would the epidural not suddenly affect your baby? Because the baby is still in your womb, he's still in the body. So for me, I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong, and of course it's used very, very widely, and sometimes it might be even necessary to use one. But for me personally, I feel like if I'm able to do it without, if I'm able to not use it, I definitely want to do it, because I wanted to feel what's happening in my body so that I can work with my body instead of being numb. I was also a little bit afraid of tearing, so I had learned, like, without the epidural you're able to feel the surges in a different way. You're able to work with them rather than just like push when you're told. And for me, the biggest why for not an epidural was because I didn't want it to affect the baby, because I learned that they can get quite drowsy and sleepy even for like a couple of weeks after birth, and that can affect their latching and the milk production, all these things. So for me personally, again, I'm not saying that it's like this is better than any other way, this just felt right for me. So for me, that the why there was very strong. I was like constantly reminding me also in the birth, like why I chose this and why I wanted to do it this way. So those are the 10 things that I did to prepare for my natural positive birth. And I just want to say again that by no means do I think, or am I saying that this kind of birth, like a natural birth or birthing outside of the hospital, birthing without an epidural, is by any means any better than any other way of giving birth. I believe there is so many different stories, so many different kinds of mamas and situations and environments, and I do believe like all mamas are just superhuman, and we are all choosing what feels best for us, or with the best awareness and knowledge and ability that we have at that point to bring our babies to the world. And this is just what I chose for myself, what felt right for me. But I do know many mamas who have given birth with epidurals or C-section or in the hospital, all kinds of different ways. And each story can be so beautiful and unique. And that's the key as well. Like, each birth is so unique, and there's an aspect of planning. And for me personally, things went very smoothly, and they went very much like I planned. Of course, there was aspects that I didn't expect, or things got a little bit tougher than what I thought at some points. But yeah, one big aspect of the birth is surrender and not knowing what's gonna come. And it's good to be prepared, not out of fear, but out of like trust, and out of what I also shared in the beginning, that knowledge is power. If you know what kind of things might happen, what kind of interventions or what kind of procedures might be suggested and involved, that you know which kind of situations they are actually necessary or appropriate, and which kind of scenarios they might be just kind of like a hospital protocol because they're in a rush and they need to get you out of there, or it's more money for them, or whatnot, so that you are aware that you can make like decisions based on knowledge, what's best for you and what's best for your baby, like being aware and feel powerful in the process, and not powerless and just like kind of needing to do what you're told. So I think that's the main thing. Like, whatever any mama chooses is like, is it coming from a place of like knowledge and power and trusting yourself and feeling safe in whatever environment, in whatever birth team, or in whatever way you are choosing to do it. And sometimes things might happen very quickly and unexpectedly, and there might not, so many things can happen during birth. But yeah, I just wanted to add that, to say that every mama is a super woman, and every birth is so unique and beautiful in their own way. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm so passionate about all these topics related to conscious pregnancy and birth and conscious motherhood, and this is the first video that I'm filming in several years. I'm like restarting a new YouTube channel. I'm very excited to share more about these topics, so I'm gonna be making videos and or specifics and also on other topics about like conscious living, conscious parenthood, life in Bali, about a lot of things. I have a lot of plans, so I can't wait to share more here. So thank you for sticking with me. If you have any questions or any comments, please drop them down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!